Hey everybody, welcome back to the Caves Cast podcast. I'm Jeremy,
I'm Ryan.
and this is our first episode of 2024. We
Yes,
took
sir.
last week off. I was in Disneyland. We had to get through the holidays. We figured we'd give ourselves a little bit of a break and start fresh with Ultimate Spider-Man #1 by Jonathan Hickman and Marco Cicchetto.
Incredible stuff.
Um, we are going to start out kind of recapping everything that's happened up until this point. It'll be a quick recap, 5-10 minutes, nothing too crazy.
Yeah.
Uh, So the new Ultimate Universe kicked off in what, June or July of last year, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was in the
They've
summer
all
of
been
last
some
year.
kind of like oversized issues,
Yeah, yeah,
so
they
they
were
they
they were
kind of
all
were a little spread out because they were oversized.
yeah. So it was like a month to a month and a half, I think, between each issue. So we started like later in the year. Um, how this all began is the maker was taking these I don't even know what you would call them, like means of multiversal universal travel.
Pretty much like every important big artifact in Marvel that would be
Yeah.
able to
Yeah,
manipulate a
there's like
universe.
the Forever Gate, the
Yeah.
Krakoa Gate, like pretty much anything that you can be, yeah, that can be used as a means of travel throughout the universe, he acquired and kind of kit bashed them all together to make this portal to another universe or
Right.
to a new universe that he would create.
Right.
That universe being really close to what the 616 should be, but it's called the 6160 universe.
Right. Which is kind of a
So,
mixture of 616 and the original Ultimate one.
right. So, and in this universe, instead of allowing everything to play out that it would have originally, the maker kind of cherry picked heroes out of existence. One of
Right.
them, Peter Parker, the spider was about to bite him when he was young. He snatches the spider off his shoulder and said, "Oh, this was going to bite you. Let me save you from that."
Right.
He delays the flight of the Fantastic Four out into space, causing them to not get their powers, but to just outright die, if I recall correctly.
Right.
And then you have his influence swaying so many other characters. Like you've got Hulk, who is not he is the Hulk, but he is the pacifist, immortal Hulk, like this leader of this cult, of this monk cult.
Right.
And you've got all of the X-related characters like Magic or Colossus, like they all have their separate factions, and things not exactly the way that it's supposed to
I
be.
would say that that is basically the Ultimate Universe's Illuminati. Like that's probably
Yeah, yeah, that which is interesting because we have the 616 Illuminati who has yet to chase after him in this new universe.
right.
So
But
we
they're in
know
the
that,
Thanos book, but
and
okay.
and that and yeah, that though, and that's like adjacent stuff because they're not even
Right.
the same Illuminati, which is a problem in and of itself.
Yeah.
But I knowing Hickman, they're probably just in his back pocket, waiting for the right moment or waiting for a surprise for us to be like, oh shit, like they're here, they're coming.
Right. Because in the Ultimate Invasion we did see before Maker left, he asked Reed if you could do it all over again, would you have gotten rid of me?
Yeah,
And
or make it so I didn't exist. Right.
right. And Reed answers with an unequivocal like
Oh
yes.
yeah, he's like, absolutely. Like,
Yeah,
and then he's
absolutely.
like, I'll remember that.
Right. So that
Which is
I'll
which
remember that is pretty much saying like it's gonna come back. It's gonna wrap
right.
it
And,
up.
and and it already has
Yeah.
because he stopped the existence of a good Fantastic Four or a good Reed Richards in some regard in that universe, only for everything to tie back together later on in the end of Ultimate Invasion, where we've got a Howard Stark Iron Man, you have a future Kang who's kind of manipulating events. You've got the
You
Maker
got
who's still trying to cook and do stuff.
Reed turns into Doctor Doom in this.
Exactly. Yeah, we find out in Ultimate Invasion that Reed does still exist in this universe, but he's been kidnapped by the Maker to work on the Immortus engine, which, as we find out, is what this version of Kang used to kind of change the future, or change things for the heroes of this universe.
Correct.
Um, so there was a lot of exposition in those 4 issues, just kind of setting the world up, setting up like the politics of this world, the different factions, the different heroes that didn't exist, and almost like heroes that have become villains
Right.
in some way. So, you had he recruits Howard to work with Reed to build the Immortus engine, but they ended up turning against him.
Right.
And um Kang comes into the picture, and Ultimate Invasion ends with Future Kang, Howard Iron Man, and Maker all trapped within the city in like a pocket outs, almost like frozen time, you know?
Yeah, it's like a pocket of time that's just in the middle that's kind of doing its
Right.
own thing. It's just a different time's
Yeah.
flowing differently in this bubble.
Right, because the city has closed itself off, and everything within the city or within this field
Right.
has disrupted itself from the regular flow of time, is kind of how we understand it.
Right.
And so the rest of his council, or this Illuminati or whatever you want to call them, they have taken it upon themselves to change the world, and they want to see what they can get away with, and the changes that they can make and what power plays they can make with the Maker being gone, and kind of vie for top dog in terms of who's going to hold all the power in this world.
Right.
And on the other side of that, you have a young Tony who's approached by Dr. Doom Reed to kind of fix things, and they learn that um, the Maker's intentions aren't the best, and it's up to them to fix everything and kind of prepare the world for the return of the Maker. And Kang and Howard Stark, once this year has elapsed and they're free from the city.
Right.
Um,
But we got to remember that in that city, a building blew up. Like,
yeah, well, no, like 'cause this is the city within the egg,
right,
like the
right,
Maker city. But then
right,
you have and that leads us directly into universe,
right.
which is like they take Cap out of the ice.
They free
We we
Thor.
they freed Thor. Thor gets stabbed by Brian Braddock. You know,
Right.
what else happens? Oh, and then this is when the Illuminati kind of make their move. Their first big move in terms of this universe. They fire a Stark Industries laser at the middle of New York, and it's kind of up in the air. Like, we don't know if it just outright killed them,
Or
or
if
if
it's kind of
it just
void them.
removed that, yeah,
Yeah.
or remove them from the timeline or whatever. I feel like it's kind of left vague on purpose,
Right. Like
and
it could pop back up any moment.
yeah, which
That thing.
which is like very in Marvel fashion,
Yeah.
and Hickman fashion. So I like that, but it does seem kind of like it's leaning towards them actually being dead. At least that's how the characters are thinking. That's their line
The
of thought.
characters believe that's the case. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So that in turn leads us directly into Ultimate Spider-Man by
Yes,
Hickman.
sir. Amazing.
Um, this was great, bro.
Yeah, dude. I
This
was
was
like a kid in a
really,
candy store
really,
reading this, dude, with Hickman's writing, Chichetto's art. Knocked it out of the park. I have
yeah.
no complaints at all.
I Oh yeah, 100%. Especially after like what what Spider-Man fans have been fed for the last several years with
Yeah.
Amazing, with some of the other Spider adjacent titles. Like, I think I can speak for a lot of people when I say like this is not really the Peter Parker that we had envisioned when we were reading him, 10 years ago,
This
or
I
even
feel
like
like is this is
20
the
years ago.
Peter for us. This is the Peter that when we were growing
Yes.
up, this is the Peter that now we're getting into our 30s or in our 30s. Now we have this Peter that we grew up with. Pretty much we didn't grow up with this one, but we grew up knowing Peter, and now we have one that's actually at age with us. I
Right.
think it's
Like,
important.
and I won't waste time like dogging on the Spider-Man editorial staff or whatever Marvel is doing over there, but it's very obvious that they have kind of taken it upon themselves to like champion this idea that fans don't want a more mature Spider-Man, that they don't want a settled down Spider-Man, that they don't want a married father Spider-Man,
A happy Spider-Man.
which yeah, which if they really really want to push this down on his luck, single young trying to learn with great power comes great responsibility, Spider-Man, they have Miles for that.
Right.
They can tell all these stories with Miles, but and they just won't commit to that. And it's okay, because now that we've got this, there's a flavor of Spider-Man for everybody. Um, so this really kicks off with kind of like on the very first page, we get like a short paragraph that kind of recaps what
Marvel's
happened
really good
in
at
the
that. I
universe.
wish DC did that more, but Marvel's
Yeah,
really good at that.
yeah. So and even on these first few pages, man, it's just Peter waking up, getting dressed in the morning. He puts his wedding ring on. So
Yep.
and these were preview pages, so we knew this was coming.
Right.
But he says good morning to his kids. You
May and
know,
Richard. May and
yeah,
Richard.
yeah, May and Richard. He gives May a kiss on the forehead. It's just it's how I imagine this family should how it would have worked
Right.
if it wasn't taken from everybody. You know,
Exactly.
so enter MJ. You know, we're kind of we're in the middle of things here,
Right.
and I need to get my charger. So give me 1 second.
But yeah, we could tell something is on Peter's mind here. Um, Not exactly sure what. Kind of hints basically that Peter can't sleep. He's having issues sleeping. And pretty much while he's talking with MJ, she asks him, is it that you didn't sleep or that you couldn't sleep? Said a little bit of both. And then we get into May pulling out an orb type thing, silver reflective chrome, not silver, orb. And pretty much just took it over, just showing that pretty much Peter has a lot on his mind. He can't sleep. And May pulls out an orb that's going to be a special, important artifact that will come back. But May is playing with an orb. Peter says, nope, no, kiddo, that's not something you play with, not a toy. Um, Mary Jane, continues to pry and asks, do you want to talk about it? He says, of course, I do. But Peter ends up leaving off to work. Man.
Before
And
before we
this
get to
this
the
part was so cool, dude.
yeah,
Like seeing this
be, be,
part.
before we move on to the bugle part, I really like how they're written here
Yeah.
because you one would assume that after so long, it's really easy to fall into the trap of let's only make them the happy, perfect couple and not make them a real couple, you
Right.
know? And that is not what we're getting with Hickman.
Right.
We know that there is something that's going on with Peter that's affecting his relationship with everybody in his life now.
Exactly.
One of them being Mary Jane. She doesn't push the issue, but she is like open to the dialogue and is letting Peter kind of come into that on his own.
Right.
She's like saying, "Hey, like if you want to talk about it," and he's immediately responds, "I do, but
Yeah.
I don't have time right now." So it's nice to see them be like actual adults about something like this and not just one note relationship, one note characters where it's just no, we're happy, we don't need to, like it's
Right.
okay. So it's nice to have that kind of dialogue between them.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, the bugle stuff I think is some of my favorite parts of this issue.
Yeah, dude. I was smiling ear to ear when I first read this, but Peter ends up going to the bugle and you know, basically he gets yelled at, or we
Mhm.
think he does. We hear the Parker, the J. Jonah Jameson tagline. And of course, then he says, oh, hey there, Peter. And he basically says, no time for chit chat. Then he says, Parker, we see Ben Parker's alive. And
Right,
he's basically the managing editor of the Bugle.
right. and
And
and for and for a little backstory on that, when that when that laser hit New York at the end of Universe, there were some noteworthy names on there
right,
on like the memoriam, one of them being May Parker. So we know that this is it kind of flips it on its head, because we know that this is kind of his Ben Parker moment,
right,
but with May being gone instead.
right,
And like, the other names we see on there are Norman and Emily Osborne, who everybody knows are Harry's parents, Um, that being said, we also don't know if we're not, we may still get the death of Ben Parker, you know?
Right.
Like and I'm willing to bet that nobody's safe. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna sit here and say that Ben's gonna be around for the entirety of this run. Because we could be 10 issues into this at the end of the year and he's dead. We
And
may
for
not know.
all we know, Ben dies and Aunt May comes back with the building. For all we know,
Exactly.
and that could happen.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So uh,
Go
and
ahead,
the character work in this is awesome, dude,
dude.
because
Yeah.
you can tell that this world has seemed like they've already lived in it for a long
Oh
time
yeah. And not
because
even
they're
that, just seeing Jonah's and Ben's like they're best friends, dude.
yeah,
Like,
they're really really close.
and it's really cool to kind of see Jonah in this different shift here where he's just
Yeah.
so friendly even towards Peter and has a best friend that he confides in, goes to breakfast with, goes and gets drinks with, and
Yeah, yeah.
you
It's
know, it's very human. It's very, it makes,
it's
it really does feel like it's Jonah's
yes.
human. He's not just a shtick to yell at somebody. He's
Yeah. I it almost makes me think that the only reason that these relationships are so tight right now is because of Ben. You know what I mean?
right.
Which makes me fear for him even more.
Exactly. Because he's the glue of everything. And
Yeah, exactly. Like and I think they get to a point like where him and Peter, yeah, it's that next page
mhm.
when Jonah stops him. He's like, "Hey man, you need a tie. Like, what are you doing? Like, you can't
Yeah.
be going to this thing without a tie."
Yeah.
So they're chatting. He's putting the tie on him, almost like a dad would.
Right.
And he's like, "Hey man," he's all like, "How do you know how your Uncle Ben is doing? Like, do you really know how he is right now?"
Right.
And so they agreed to look out for him, because he means a lot to both of them.
Right.
So again, which is why it makes me fear for Ben.
Yeah.
Um, but this thing that they've been talking about since page one is the funeral
Mhm.
for everybody that New York lost in the attack. You know,
Right.
so the world does think that Tony is at fault for this,
Yep.
and but because they only don't know everything that's happened with the Maker and his council and all of the dark and dirty stuff that's happened behind the scenes.
Right.
Um, we
But Harry goes up to the podium, and that's
Yeah,
kind of,
okay. I also really really appreciate the fact that we have Matt Murdock
oh,
as
dude, yeah.
the father who is like doing the eulogy and is like leading the service, the funeral
Which makes
service.
us all wonder, is he even Daredevil? He's wearing sunglasses, so is he even Daredevil? Is he
Right, right. We don't know.
yeah,
We don't know because and that's something that's not really talked about. Like, is he blind for other reasons or is he blind because of the chemicals again?
right.
And does he have the enhanced hearing?
Or did Maker make it to where he switched the poison or the serum or whatever
Yeah,
his eyes
exactly,
that day? Or the
exactly.
poison.
And right. So, like you said, Harry's is brought up to kind of wrap things up there, and it's a very like a powerful speech, I think,
Right,
because it shows you where he's at in terms of things, as opposed to Peter, you know, like Peter's kind of resigned to this idea that like it was out of his control. He has to kind of like just move on and just deal with it the best that he can. And even Ben kind of like tells him that too.
right,
But with Harry's the opposite. Harry thinks that like the memories of these people that they're going to have in their hearts and in their minds is not going to be enough to like get rid of the grief that they're feeling.
right,
So it's very heavily implied that he is going to take action,
right.
which we already have sightings of the Green Goblin.
Yep.
By the time this issue's done, issue two is going to introduce the new Green Goblin.
I
And
mean, they pretty much already gave the spoiler out if you
right,
look at alternate
right.
cover.
That's where I was going with this is like, if you've been paying attention and even if you didn't see the spoiler, I feel like it was really obvious that this Green Goblin is Harry.
We pretty much said it right after, right
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we even said that during one of our previous episodes when we were talking about some universe stuff. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like when we talked about the NYCC announcements.
yeah,
Um, what's interesting though is neither MJ or Peter are friends with Harry in this universe.
Right.
He even like they have a quick bit of dialogue after the funeral, and Peter asks, like, have you ever met him? And she's like, only once, but he seemed like a different person with different circumstances, you know?
Right.
So I there are so many references and little like inklings to what we know of the Spider-Man mythos, but with
Right.
everything just so like I don't want to use the word wrong, but it is, you
It's
know?
manipulated. Maker
Yeah,
just manipulated everything.
there are so many strings that have been pulled that nobody is in the spot where they should be,
Right.
which which gives us a really, really good platform to jump off into something brand new for these
Right.
characters. Um, we go back to the Bugle, and Jonah's pissed, man. He's out. He says he
Yeah.
quits. You know, Ben walks in to their meeting, which is something they talked about early on in the issue. Said that they got to get to this funeral and they got to come back for their meeting. You know,
And I love Ben, like seeing Jonah's reaction and then seeing Ben's and like
yeah,
how polar opposite they are,
yeah,
how like very passive Ben
mhm,
is compared to Jonah. It's just
yeah,
really cool to actually see some character in Ben,
yeah,
Uncle
right.
Ben.
And that with it being consistent about what we know of Ben and what he means to Peter and the values that he's instilled in like six
Exactly.
foot six Peter. Like and that's just Hickman, man.
Yeah.
Like he did all the world building in Invasion and in Universe, and this is strictly character work.
Yeah.
It's personal. There's a small cast of characters that are important in this book, and it's only about them. It's only
Exactly.
about how they're feeling post, Invasion in Universe, how they're feeling about each other, how they're feeling about moving forward, and how their lives are all changing.
Right.
So they're apparently the Bugle is under new ownership.
Yes, sir.
That new owner being none other than Wilson Fisk, which,
Yeah. You thought the Jonah Spidey propaganda was bad.
yep, I, yep.
We got a
So,
mob boss making propaganda basically now.
and Hickman's wasting no time, man. Like he is just getting into the thick of it, which is good because
Yeah.
I don't think we need two, three, or hell, even a whole first arc of just like setting things up.
Right.
We're tearing through it,
Because
you know?
you'll see by the end of this, but even by the end of this didn't feel so much like an origin story.
Right.
It felt so natural.
It just felt like we were dropped into the middle of their lives, which is how it should feel,
Yeah.
because like for Peter, he hasn't been Spider-Man. So
Right.
for him, this was dropped into the middle of his life, like he doesn't, and we'll get to that.
Yeah, we will.
But like you know, we find out that Fisk takes over the Bugle. Ben has no problem walking out the door at that point, because
Right.
he and for them, they're all about telling the truth, that I think that speaks volumes about whether or not you like Jonah's attitude with Peter or with Spider-Man. At the end of the day, he just wants to tell the truth,
Right.
and he wants to do good news, but he understands that the industry he is in can be very dirty. So he has to do dirty-handed stuff to get it out there sometimes.
Right.
Um, and this page with them leaving,
Right.
Fisk and who is this character?
To be honest with you, I have no clue.
Just some random thug. It looks
It
like,
looks like it's just as
and maybe he'll have importance later on. I don't know.
yeah.
But they get out of their car and bam, Green Goblin shows up and blows it up.
Yeah.
And again, another character introduced. No time wasted. We're really just like we're getting straight to the actual story here and what this book is going to be all about.
Yeah.
And I like this little tidbit right here where it says a bar with no name.
Yeah.
And it's just a random ass building with like no
Yeah.
sign on it.
Yeah.
And there it's it's Ben and Jonah just, chopping it up, talking about what they're going to do next, what they should do next, and how they're going to go about it. So
Right.
they decide that they're going to probably start their own news gig,
Yeah.
and it's just good stuff, man. Like I never thought that, like, when I was younger, I would find Spider-Man more fulfilling when it's just two characters sitting down, like, having a
Right.
conversation.
Just character development. That's all
Yeah,
we wanted. You're not getting that in Amazing Spider-Man. Things just
yeah,
happen over there. Things are just happening.
yeah.
Nothing's
It's
invested.
happening, but it doesn't mean anything,
Yeah, nothing. You're not invested in what
Yeah,
So I love this too because it's just okay. We got 10 minutes. So
yeah. We got some time.
yeah, but I love this too because they're shooting the shit, but you could really tell in the dialogue between them that they have decades of just friendship between them at this
Yes,
point. You could
yes,
just feel it. The way Hickman's really good at leaving these little subtle little clues to give you context when you don't even realize it. It's almost like
yeah,
you're gaining what people would have to do large expositions of. He just no problem, just in a few words, you know exactly what's going on. It's
right. And
Hickman's just good lord, man.
yeah, man, and there's a reason why he's, like, renowned as one of the greatest storytellers in comics.
Yeah,
Like,
he's on my
th th
Mount Rushmore for
yeah, this,
writers.
this, this, despite the fact that his storytelling can be really complex
You could,
and can sometimes feel convoluted, he
but it's
he does.
always it's never unnecessary. Everything
Right,
that even if it's
right,
convoluted, it'll pay off. Everything.
right. And I don't even know if convolute is necessarily the right word to, like, label it as, because he really usually does just come back right around and tie it all together
Mhm.
in a neat bow.
Yeah.
Um, and there are things that don't seem important early on that become important, you know, dozens of issues later, years
Right.
later, even, that take forever to pay off.
And
So,
to be honest with you, when we just to go back to what we were talking about, Ben,
mhm,
this gives me worries too, because if he's going to start his own and he's going to be a rival to Fisk,
yeah, it's just another
that's a
crosshair to
target
put on his
immediately
back.
on
Yeah,
him. He's got a target on
yeah,
him.
yeah.
So
Which
you think Wilson Fisk is going to deal with competition in the news propaganda
exactly.
world?
No, he's not. He
He's
doesn't even deal
be a
with
thug.
competition
He's
in the
going to be a
mob life,
thug
dude.
about it. He's going to be a don. He's going to.
Yeah, yeah.
So that
Uh,
scares me too.
and then so Peter joins the conversation, and Jonah takes off. You know,
Yeah.
and so it's just Peter and Ben kind of, like, talking things out, seeing how things are going to go, what's going to go on next.
Right.
And I think at the end of the day, Peter's just worried, because
Well, Peter also mentions that he feels something's wrong and something's been
yes,
missing in his life. He feels
yes,
something important. He doesn't know what, but he's just been feeling this way for about a few years now. He has everything he wants. He's got a loving wife,
yeah,
kids, but something is missing in his life. That's
yeah.
and
And
pretty much he talks about it with MJ, and he goes and talks about it with Ben, and both of them just give him the advice of if this is going to better you, do what you
do
think
it.
you need to do. Do
Yeah,
whatever.
I don't know that it's ever specifically stated that. I mean, obviously Ben doesn't know what's up,
No.
with, in terms of the spider catalyst, and Peter sitting on this for a little while.
Right.
But it's almost implied that MJ has some kind of knowledge.
Almost. Yeah. I'm on the fence about it because every time I read it, I'm like, she could know. And
Yeah, and we talked about this yesterday. Like, I read these pages a few times, and I am kind of leaning. I could lean either way,
yeah.
because it's kind of a vague conversation. Um, but it's nice to see them have an actual adult conversation about, like, not necessarily their problems, but their worries and the things that, like, are weighing on their hearts and on their minds, because we don't get
Yeah.
any of that in mainline Spider-Man right now.
No.
It's just cheap
And it's
surface
always
level
just
stuff.
drama for the sake of drama.
Yes.
I don't want to understand your point of view because my point of view, it's nice to
Yes.
actually see them like work like a functioning relationship should.
Yes. Yes. And that's all any of us ever really wanted,
Right.
you know? Like we weren't asking for them to be the happiest, go luckiest, always sunshine and rainbows couple because that's not realistic. And that's
Yeah.
also not realistic for Spider-Man and for Peter Parker.
Right.
So to have what seems like a very grounded in reality relationship is the only thing we ever asked for, you know? And
Right.
it's just incredible to finally get that and finally to be excited about this. Especially as someone I've never toted myself as a big Spider-Man fan, you know?
Right.
Like I like Spider-Man. I like the movies. I've played, I watched the animated series growing up. I played a lot of the games. I've read plenty of Spider-Man stuff in the past, but I would not consider myself an avid Spider-Man reader just because of the way that the character's been treated, you know?
Right. Well,
So
the mainline title makes it hard for you to
exactly,
be a
exactly.
Spider-Man
And I
fan.
and I tried, man. I tried. I
Yeah.
gave I gave the first few issues a shot after Spencer and when Zebwell started, and it just wasn't for me. It was not something I was interested in reading, not something I was interested in even like at first I didn't even want to hear about it, man. It was just like irritating.
Right.
So
We see
we,
Peter
we
on the rooftop now,
yeah,
and now we see basically how he got the orb
yeah,
right
from the night before. Yeah.
night before, and
So okay,
basically
so okay, that this I looking back again, this kind of answers that question for me that he hasn't really been sitting on this for that long.
no,
But innately, he's had this feeling that something is not right with
he
him and
thinks
with the
that he
world he
knows
inhabits.
whatever is in this orb is so life changing,
Yes.
so that he's weighing it. He's weighing it this entire time.
Yeah. So like he's just kind of sitting here doing some work, you know, and then this box just shows up in the middle of his living room. And it calls out to him, it says, this is for Peter Parker, Peter Parker, Peter Parker. And out pops Iron Lad or a hologram of Iron Lad. And it's just a recording and it's revealed to be Tony. And he explains to Peter that not everything is what it seems. He was manipulated and framed for the attack on New York, and that there are hundreds, potentially hundreds of cases like Peter's where they were robbed of their life. They
Right,
were robbed of their destinies. So he asks him, "Hey, in 6 months, things will change. The world is going to change. We want you to be standing with us. So basically, here are the keys to do so. Here's the means to take life in your hands and get your life back and get your destiny back."
right,
So, and he doesn't really even know necessarily what it was. He didn't know that it was a spider until he opens it.
right.
And inside this orb is a suit and the spider to kind of start him on his path to become Spider-Man.
Right, because now it says now, and he's basically holding the orb.
Yeah. And
And
I'll read this dialogue because this really is just like is the home run moment of the issue, you
yeah,
know? It says, "These people stole your future. These people robbed you of your destiny. The question is, do you want it back?" And Peter, without hesitation, "I want it."
yeah,
And we get a flashback to Ben during their conversation. He's like, "Hey, man, you've been living life half awake, or half asleep.
wake
Wake
up.
up." And then he smiles and he sees the ending of his conversation with MJ. "Go get him, Tiger." And this, like, I was like grinning from ear to ear, man,
Yeah,
when
dude.
when I read this page and to see that spider bite him and we flip and it's just the solid black suit and he is Spider-Man.
Dude, that final page, man, where he's just standing there in such like that Spider-Man pose, and you're like,
It's so
we're
cool,
here, dude,
man.
we're
It's
here.
so
But
cool.
you
It's
know,
so cool.
dude, I'm in heaven, dude. This is
Yeah,
Hickman,
seriously, bro.
Shadow.
10 out of 10, man.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, this is. I can't
Everybody
praise
I've
this
talked
enough.
to, every single person I've talked to is over cloud nine about this.
Dude,
And rightfully so, man. We have been waiting how many years for this?
I haven't been stoked about a Spider-Man book in about a decade, maybe
Yeah,
since
yeah,
Superior happened.
yeah. And like, it's so funny, man, because I feel like these last 2 pages and like 3 pages when they're talking about these people stole your future. I don't want to be that guy, but it almost feels like Hickman saying, "Hey, Marvel robbed you guys of the
Yeah.
future that you should have been
It's
given
a
with
Marvel.
Spider-Man.
It's a critique on
They
Marvel
robbed you
tutorial.
of your destiny with Spider-Man. Like
Yeah,
as a
you
Spider-Man
ruined
fan, they
my
robbed
fucking
you of your
destiny of
destiny.
X-Men, you fuckers. You know, like that's basically what he's saying. He's
But
like, I love it.
that's all we got time for, guys. Thanks for tuning in again. And we will be continuing covering Ultimate Spider-Man every month as it comes out. So thanks again.
Yes, sir.
Peace out.
Have a good one, guys.